Welcome everyone to Open Arts. My name is Patty. I'm so excited to be hosting Tim Dolan again here on Open Arts. We had Tim Dolan bring his Broadway Up Close tour a few months ago for us, and it was one of the most fascinating hours of Open Arts programming we've had yet to date. So I'm excited to have him back. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. It's sunny and perfect autumn weather here in New York City, so I hope it's the same for you. And Broadway is back, so what better time to examine Broadway and the history and the flops and the ghosts and everything else. We couldn't be more excited in New York City than we are now to have Broadway back. So before we get started, I'd like to give a quick shout out to our founding sponsor, Unitex. Sing for Hope extends a special thank you to Unitex, a founding sponsor of Open Arts, for making this program possible. Unitex Healthcare Laundry Services is the largest family-owned and operated healthcare linen and uniform rental company in the country and has been serving the Northeast region for 100 years. Sing for Hope is grateful for their generous support. And without further ado, Tim, I'm going to read your bio. I found it and I find it fascinating. So I'm going to introduce you to Tim Dolan. Tim moved to the Big Apple shortly after graduating high school to pursue a career in the arts. On the small screen, Tim was featured on season 2 of HBO's Boardwalk Empire. On stage, Tim was the dance captain in the off-Broadway revival of Once Upon a Mattress starring Jackie Hoffman and John Lipsinka Epperson. He also performed as Abraham in the long-running hit musical Altar Boys. His other acting credits include the national tours of Altar Boys and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, as well as numerous regional credits. He is a proud member of Actors Equity Association. As an arts educator, Tim was on faculty at Rosie's Theater Kids, Rosie O'Donnell's arts organization, as well as Dream Makers Performing Arts. Combining his love of theater with his experiences as a New York City tour guide, Tim is excited to share and spread the knowledge of Broadway's history and stories with you. Please welcome Tim Dolan.
Hi, hello. Tim. Well said. Thank you, Patrick.
My pleasure. And you know what, though? I don't think that bio covered my favorite part. Did we go over? You're from Michigan, aren't you?
I'm from Michigan, yeah.
That's where I'm from as well. I remember discussing.
That's right. Remind me what part. Well. Yeah, remind me where.
Right, Rochester.
You're Rochester, yeah. And I was supposed to do a show in Rochester, starting rehearsals on March 29th, 2020. What could go wrong?
Was that Meadowbrook? Was that from Meadowbrook by any chance? Yeah, that's like one of the that's the highlight of Rochester.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, I was supposed to do Little Shop of Horrors. I was going to be Seymour in Little Shop, starting rehearsals on, like I say, March 29th. It's going great.
Always fun to look back on what we were doing just before time stopped.
Correct.
Well, I know that you're getting back to in-person tours.
Yeah.
But we're excited that you're willing to use your now year and a half experience of virtual tour guiding to lead us back through Broadway Up Close. So
yeah, we all have these new special skills. Here we are.
That's right. Yeah, we know very well how to keep our pets away from the camera at all times at this point. Yeah,
sure. Incredible. Thank you so much. It's so great to see you again. Thanks for having me back. I had such a wonderful time last time. So round 2. Here we go.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn it over to you. Take it away. I'm excited to learn about Broadway Up Close with you.
Thank you. So as Patrick said, my name is Tim Dolan. I'm an actor. First and foremost, mainly I sing and dance for a living, mainly doing musicals. My one foray, as Patrick mentioned, into the non-musical world. I was on season 2 of Boardwalk Empire. I had one line. My line was, "Thank you, ma'am. I killed it. I've never been more talented. My parents have never been more proud. I'm a huge deal." The cliche exists for actors that we all become waiters. Everyone thinks that we all just become professional tray holders. But the true case is you'll sign a contract for a show. So I was meant to do Little Shop of Horrors in Michigan, March 29th. I signed my contract for that in November. So I knew about almost 4 months in advance that I was set to do that. And then you sign a contract, and then very often you sit and wait until you get paid, until you start rehearsals. Sometimes a global pandemic happens and you never start rehearsals, but most often you start rehearsals. But there's a lot of time waiting, not waiting tables, just waiting in your apartment, not getting paid. And so I remember calling my parents years ago when I started my professional career about 18 years ago. I remember calling them and saying, even when it's going great, I still make no money sometimes, where I'm just sitting in my apartment waiting. So instead of holding a tray, my favorite color is green. I'm the most Irish person you've ever met in your entire life. So my favorite color, green, I put on a green shirt. And 11 years ago, I stood in Times Square and I said, I'm going to see if I can convince someone to give me all of their money. And I'll tell you all the things no one will ever tell you about our weird lives as actors. And I'm going to build a tour of the theater district. I'm an idiot. The first tour I ever did, I decided to do all 41 Broadway theaters in one tour. The first time I ever did it, it was 7.5 hours long. Whoops. My friend who was my guinea pig, he said, I think it's good. I just think shorter. So we've shortened it. And we now as a company present a series of 5 exterior tours. We have 1 interior tour inside Broadway's oldest theater, the Hudson Theater, opened in 1903. And so we have 6 tours that we offer. And now coming out of the pandemic, we're getting up and running. I have a gift shop in Times Square that just reopened. And so as Patrick said, Broadway's back. I think as of tonight, 28 shows will be playing on Broadway in the 41 Broadway theaters. By the end of the year, I think there's 36 shows that will open in the 41 theaters. And so it's coming back. But today we're going to talk about Broadway's beginnings. We're going to talk about the theaters at the southern end of the district. As we go, I'm an open book. Nothing's off limits. Any question you have, how much my rent is, where I live, all the things that I don't care about, but you always want to know. You're going to ask all of those questions in the chat on the side or a part of your screen. That's how you can communicate with me. If I love interaction, it helps me in my life feel like I'm talking to actual humans. And so also while you're here, if you have a favorite Broadway show, I would love for you to drop that in the chat. Let me know where you're watching from. If you feel like interacting, any of that helps me. And like I say, any question you have, nothing off limits, nothing off book, let me know and we'll weave it into everything. And so Broadway, we'll start very easy. There are what I think is easy, 41 Broadway theaters, about 111 off-Broadway theaters. My question for you is, what is the difference between a Broadway theater and an off-Broadway theater? What is the difference between Jersey Boys, which is off-Broadway now, and Wicked, which is on the same street, but one is Broadway, one is off-Broadway? So most people think location. We know that those are both on the same street, and so that kind of is almost instantly debunked. Most people think caliber performance, but I would wager to say if you went to see Jersey Boys and you went to see Wicked, you'd see that they're both very talented humans. And so that is also debunked. A lot of people come on my tour and say, well, it's probably how much I paid, which sure, you pay for different prices, but all of the preconceived notions of what most people think is the standard is mostly untrue. The thing that matters is the number of seats in the building. So 500 seats or more Broadway, 499 and less off Broadway, 99 and less off Broadway. So then that, when I'm on a contract in New York City, that also determines my paycheck. How much I am paid is determined by the number of seats in the building. And most of the time, welcome to my life, it does not work in your favor. They build off-Broadway as close to 500 as humanly possible without going over into 500, because then to do that exact same show with 10 seats less, they can pay me a lot less money. So years ago, I did this musical, as Patrick mentioned, called Altar Boys. I had done the tour on the road for a year in my little yarmulke. I played Abraham, the Jewish member of the group. And after a year on the road, they asked if I would join the New York company. And I have to tell you, this is all I ever wanted. This show in New York City, if I can do that, I will die happy. And I walk into our first rehearsal, and I think it was 497 seats in the theater, 3 seats away from a full Broadway contract. So I was getting paid $990 to do the show 8 times a week. The exact same show, 3 seats more. My minimum went from $990 to $2,200 minimum a week, a difference of $1,300 less. So I'm an idiot. Welcome to my life. I would pretend to walk into work every day, and I pretend to have 3 folding chairs tucked under my arm. And when I'd sign in for work, I'd pretend to sit down these 3 chairs and I'd say $2,200. And they said, Tim, we love you. No. So even if it is that close, everything in my paycheck life also determined by something as random and stupid as the number of seats in the building. Now, our southernmost theater of the 41 today is the Nederlander Theater. It celebrates its 100th birthday this year. 1921 is when it opened. That's the southernmost currently, but that wasn't always the case. If you were going to see, let's say, Hamilton, Wicked, any of our big shows now, if those existed 120, 140 years ago, you wouldn't have gone to Times Square, you would have gone to Herald Square. And so let's look briefly. I want to show you a map we have. There we are. Patrick, will you pull up that map for us? So you see on the map on your screen, you'll see the big white arrow that points down to Herald Square. Herald Square is where all our theaters used to be. So George M. Cohen said, give my regards to Broadway. Remember me too. Herald Square, if you know that lyric, that was our old district. All the theaters used to be about 7 blocks south of where we reside today. Herald Square, let me show you, I want to show you a photo of what it looked like so we can go back in time. This is Broadway's beginnings, after all. And so here you'll see Herald Square circa 1880s, 1890s. In the very background of the photo on the horizon, you'll see a star. I'm asking you to have incredible eyesight. I have no idea how large your screen is. That star on the horizon, of course, is the Star of Macy's. In the background, just in the middle, the tallest building is, of course, the Times Tower, which we will walk towards virtually today. In the middle of the photo, you see the 6th Avenue elevated train, which it has been removed and demolished, but very similar to what we have left, which is the High Line. And in this area, in Herald Square, everything moves north to Times Square. In the early 1900s, we'll talk about why we move. All you need to know at this point is that only one thing is left. In the original theater district, it's not a theater that's left, unfortunately, it's a steakhouse. It's called Keen's Steakhouse. And we love Keen's because Keen's was in a perfect ring. Around Keen's, you had all of the theaters of Herald Square. So at intermission today, you go see Wicked. You have 15 minutes between Act 1 and Act 2. You go buy a drink. You go buy your Defying Gravity sweatshirt or whatever you do. And then you go back and you finish Act 2 and Act 3. In the olden days, all the actors from all the surrounding theaters, full costume and full wigs, would run across the street to Keen's Steakhouse, and Keen's would have beers lined up along the bar, and the actors would slam as many beers as you could in 15 minutes, and then run back and finish Act 2 and Act 3 a little more tipsy than Act 1. When we look at Keen's, I want you to look at what Keen's looks like today. So this is Keen's circa today. So Patrick, will you pull up... there we are. And so you'll notice it looks like three townhouses all glued together, because it is. In 1885, when it opened, it was 3 townhouses, or similar to brownstones, that the original owner, Albert Keen, combined together. And then, like I say, all the theaters were in a ring around. And then if you go back in time, so take a mental snapshot of what the building looks like today, and then go back in time with me. And this, while we don't have a date for this photo, it's certainly not 1885 based on the cars in the photo, but early 1900s, one of the oldest photo I've ever seen of Keen's. And there you see that same townhouse design. The thing we love about Keen's, when you walked in, the first thing you saw was a little boy, a 12-year-old boy called a pipe boy, P-I-P-E. And this little dude would welcome you to the restaurant. He'd say, "Have you ever been here before?" And all of you would have said, "No." He'd pull out his book. He'd write each of your names in the book and give each of your names a number. And what the number corresponded to was a pipe he would give each of you to smoke out of during dinner. At the end of dinner, you'd finish smoking tobacco out of your Keen's pipe. On your way out, you'd toss your pipe to the little dude. He'd catch it, he'd keep it for you, and he'd wave you on your way. On your next visit, you see the same little dude. He'd say the same thing. "Have you ever been here before?" And now you'd all say, "Uh-huh." He'd pull out his book. He'd find your name. Next to your name is the number. The number corresponds to the pipes, of course. And the pipes he stored in the strangest place humanly possible. He stored them on little hooks on the ceiling of the restaurant. And so here, untouched, exactly intact as it has been since 1885. Here is the main Lincoln Room at Keen's. 45,000 pipes on the ceiling. Another storeroom upstairs with another 45,000, 90,000 pipes. All based on the little number system that little dude had in his little book all those years ago. And on the walls in the photo, you're seeing headshots and press shots of all of the actors of the day, posters of the day, correspondence of the day. And it's your one chance to open a door, go back in time, and step into old school Broadway in Herald Square. It's a glorious place that I try to visit once a year. It's very expensive. So on my non-rich actor budget, I pretend I'm rich once a year. And I have my if I have my dinner at Keen's. Sharon says, if you go to the Opera House in Germany today, they do an intermission where you have enough time to do dinner. Of course, yes. The operas are so long, they're like, you're starving. Maybe you should eat. That sounds right. Yeah, so similar. I saw a one-man strange interlude by my friend David Greenspan a couple of years ago. Well, now 4 years ago, probably, including the pandemic. And it was 6 hours long. And the same thing, there was a dinner break and you got to eat. And I thought, I know, it's 6 hours. I'm starving. I love that. Sharon, thanks for sharing. You've convinced me dinner at Keen's tonight. Yeah, you're going to have to go. Keen's is on 36th Street between Herald Square, between 5th and 6th Avenue. Keen''S, similar spelling to Laura Keene, who gave the famous performance at Ford's Opera or Ford's Theater in front of Abraham Lincoln, but no relation to the Keens. if that's even where your brain went. You're like, I don't even know who Laura Keene is. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back to our map. I want to walk forward a little bit and let's take you virtually into Times Square. So here is, as Patrick will pull up, here is our map of Times Square now. And so the entire district moves in really October 1903 is really when we see some full solid movement. There was little, trickles and fits and starts here that got us there. But really 1903 is when we've really moved. And we are now in what is then still Longacre Square, slowly becoming, or very quickly becoming Times Square. And so as you're looking in the map, you see where it says the word Victoria. Just next to Victoria, you see that little sliver of land that is 42nd Street and 7th. And so you have to imagine all of our theaters were in Herald Square. As we start to move north, what the theaters replaced in what was then Longacre Square was barns, stables, and manure. There was pile of manure everywhere. And so in early 1900s, 1903, Sarah says Mama Leone's. Mama Leone's had a couple different locations. Their first location, I believe, was where is now Hadestown at the Walter Kerr. And then many people who come on my tours know it. For years, it was near the Majestic on 45th. But unfortunately, I don't think it's open anymore. And if it is, that's absolutely a surprise to me, or news to me. But I'm fairly certain it closed. I want to say late 90s, early 2000s, I think it closed. You'll Google search and know the answer probably faster than I will in this virtual moment. But someone sent me even a menu from Mama Leone's that sits in my office. But I didn't move here in time. So lots of people have Mama Leone menus and memories, but I missed it. So I don't know. Sarah Bell, it sounds like you have memories of it, which I love. So barn, stables, manure. One business owner in the middle of this manure says, I'm going to build the headquarters of my business in the middle of this manure of Longacre Square at 42nd Street and 7th Avenue. And the city said, okay. He says, well, if the building I build is tall enough and impressive enough, will you let me rename everything in the area after my business? And the city said, I mean, it would have to be crazy. He says, yeah, just wait. So imagine little barns, little stables. This is Longacre Square, what it looked like, as Patrick will pull up on your screen. This is what it looked like before our theaters move in. You'll notice the man in white in the middle of the photo picking up that ginormous pile of manure. And if you look dead center in the middle of the photo at what is the southern end of Longacre Square is soon to be this guy's headquarters of his business. It was the Pabst Hotel, if you know the beer family from Milwaukee, PBR Beer. They had just built a hotel in the year 1900. 3 years later, after they build this beautiful hotel, this little guy comes along. His name was Adolph Ox. He buys it, he demolishes it, and he starts building. And so in the place of their hotel, in its place, he starts building his office tower. So this, as Patrick is going to pull up on your screen, is 1901. So this is 1901 of his little office tower. All the New Yorkers I love just jaded, not even looking, not even noticing that this is all happening. And then by the time it was finished in 1903, let's look at what it looked like. I call it opening night, even though it's not a theater, but let me live my theater life. Everything I think of is in theater terms. Here's what it looked like by the time it was finished in 1903. Very similar to the shape of the Flatiron, but of course not the Flatiron. And so when it opens in 1903, it was the second tallest skyscraper in all of New York City. And everyone looked straight into the sky at this one singular building and said, okay, you win. What's your business? And the owner said, Adolph Fox said, oh, I own a little newspaper. It's called the New York Times. I would love to call this Times Square. And they all roll their eyes and say, sure. So in 1903, into the ball drop, ball drop is 1907, but into the New Year celebration in 1904, it officially becomes Times Square. And this is, let me show you. This is when things go awry. 1963, it's not landmarked. The New York Times has moved out 50 years prior. And Allied Chemical buys the building and it's not landmarked. And they rip off the entire original outside of the entire building. And they cover the entire thing. And what you see on your screen was very easy to clean white tile. To this day, the entire structure that you see on your screen is exactly what is there today. What is there today now also is empty. The entire thing, which is the most prime real estate in the entire world, is empty. It's a 23-story empty building with a Walgreens on the bottom 2 floors. Where they make all their money now is they've refaced the entire exterior, all 4 sides, with billboards. And so then the owners make about $23.5 million every year by just hanging signs on the outside of an empty building in the most prime real estate of the world. Welcome to New York City. Capitalism and laziness at its prime. The dumbest thing you've ever heard. But yeah, every year when 1 million people stare at that building in person to watch the ball drop on the top, most of them, I would wager to say, almost all of them, have no idea they're staring at an empty building that is just sitting there only making money on the outside. So one guy waddles into the neighborhood at the same time. It's a man I bet you've heard of if you're joining me for a tour called Broadway Up Close, Broadway's Beginnings. I bet you've heard of him. I bet just maybe not him specifically is what I would say. I'm going to put up on a screen a photo of this gentleman. And so this gentleman, his name is Oscar Hammerstein. If you've heard of Hammerstein, you're probably thinking of his grandson, Rogers and Hammerstein, Oklahoma, South Pacific, Sound of Music, Cinderella. That's Hammerstein 2. This is Hammerstein 1. We call him the father of Times Square. Every single day of his life, he lived his motto. And his motto was, every day of your life should feel like opening night. And so top hat and tails every single day, exactly like you saw. He also was 5'4". So when you wear a top hat like that, you become 5'10" or 5'11" when you waddle around the neighborhood. And this guy looked around as the area is turning in, as people are starting to move in, and people are starting to move in, and the city is really changing and moving north. It's becoming a theater district instead of Herald Square. He looked around and said, I just think it's better. I just think this area, this Times Square area, then still Longacre Square, I just feel like it's better than Herald Square. I just feel it. And he looked at all of his friends and he starts building, and he says, if I start building here, will you demolish all of your theaters in Herald Square and move north with me? And every one of his friends looked at this insane man and said, sure. And they do exactly what he wants. And so he starts building. The first theater he builds on 42nd, not his first in the area, but his first on 42nd Street. I'm going to show you a photo. It is a glorious photo. It is perhaps one of my favorite photos of the area. And so here on your screen, very shortly, you're going to see what is the Victoria, which was his first theater he built. And this is the corner of 42nd and Street and 7th, which is now, of course, a Chase Bank, the Reuters skyscraper. And at the very corner, right where it says garden in the screen, now that is the subway entrance at 42nd Street and 7th, which if any of you are avid theater goers and New Yorkers, you have probably come up through the subway entrance at this exact location. So now this is, the theater opens in 1899. He only had enough money to buy the land, and then he ran out of money. And he says, how do you build a Broadway theater when you don't have any money left? We know Hammerstein was a genius. We also know he was a con artist. He was a very smart crook. And so he goes to Herald Square. All of his friends' theaters there are abandoned, but not yet demolished. So he steals all of his friends' stuff. He rips out all the seats from one, all the doors from another. There's a cruise ship in the Hudson River. He steals all the really nice rugs and carpets off the ship. The only thing he spent money on to build a 1,200-seat theater, that theater you just saw in your photo, the only thing he spent money on was white paint and a little bit of spare wood. Everything else was stolen, or I say creatively recycled from another building in the area. So when he builds it, let me pull up that photo again for you one more time. And Patrick's going to put it on your screen so we can zoom in on again. So here is, there we are, technology. And now I'm back. There is, you see the two big words under his name or next to his name, which are roof garden. The big trend of the day, you'd go see a Broadway show, let's say Hamilton. After the show is over, all of you in the audience, Hamilton at the Richard Rodgers, there's 1,300 of you. You would have all gotten into elevators in the lobby. The elevators in the lobby would take you all the way to the roof of the building, and there would be another Broadway show and another Broadway theater on the roof of the building. Typically, the understudies would step into the spotlight. They would do shows up on the roof, their own shows, sometimes different versions of the show you saw downstairs. And then you, as the consumer, would spend your entire life all night drinking on the roof. So when you look at this photo, I want you to look at the right side of the photo above where it says Hammerstein's Roof Garden. And you'll notice that's the rear end. That's the backstage, the back wall of the Rooftop Theater. And then along the line, you see the kind of little openings along the side, which is the 42nd Street side on the left. And that was where the whole theater was. It was 650 seats. Now I'm going to show you photos of what the theater on the roof looked like You just have to trust that I'm not lying to you. When we show you these actual photos, the first time I saw it, it was a little more fancy than I had initially imagined. And so here, let me show you. Give me 1 second. There we are. There we are. Okay, so they're a little more fancy than I think you're initially imagining. And so here, if I can do it, there we are. My technology was going great, and then I was doing less great. Okay, Patrick, share that photo with them, which is the theater on the roof. It was called the Paradise Rooftop Theater. It was very fancy. There were garden elements, always some sort of floral element involved, which is where you get the phrase Paradise Rooftop Garden. But his direct competition was across the street. And so before we talk about his competition, look in the photo and you'll notice Patty on the piano. One, I love your screen name. You're hilarious. But yeah, can you imagine the pandemic if we had theaters like this? Yeah, Sharon, can you imagine the pandemic if we just had open air rooftop theaters? We would have been like, let's just go upstairs. We'll do Hamilton on the roof. It'll all be fine. So in the photo, what I want you to notice is there's an overhang. So if it's raining or snowing, you're protected because you're on the roof. What you don't see in the photo are any people. So 100 years ago, all of you ladies, corseted evening gowns, dudes, four-piece suits. Deodorant has not been invented. It's 95 degrees. It's the middle of the summer. You're sweating. And so in the middle, the complaints, correct, we would have all still had jobs. In the middle of the summer, you're sweating. It's hot. It's nasty. You all smell great. So the complaint he got was, I'm hot. It's hot up here. And he said, yeah, I know. We're on a roof. I don't know what you want from me. And they would all say, yeah, but we paid $1. That's kind of expensive. We're hot. And so he says, okay, you have to do something. Enough people complained. And so he says, okay, I got you. So what you don't know, you finish Hamilton downstairs, you get in your little elevator with all your friends and you're all going up to the roof. Unbeknownst to you, he installs air vents next to your ankles. And as you're climbing to the top of that elevator, he's pumping the most hot, stifling air you've ever felt in your life into that car. So by the time it gets to the top, it is so hot in that car that when the doors open, anything feels cooler than where you just were. And it feels air conditioned. And the moment you complain, he would say, well, it's cooler out here. And you'd say, yeah, you're right. And there was no way you could complain. I mean, a genius, but an absolute con artist. So his competitor that I mentioned was directly across the street. It's a guy that maybe you've heard of. His name was Florence Ziegfeld of the Ziegfeld Follies. This is his number one arch nemesis, waving from the other side of the street. And so if we have a group of people coming to 42nd Street, obviously Hammerstein wants you to come to his and not Ziegfeld, but he has to entice you. So what he does to entice you in 1903, he builds a farm on the roof of the theater. He covers the entire roof in dirt. He builds this entire farm and village with this huge windmill that operates above the farm. He digs out a middle part of the roof and puts a river on the roof of the theater, hires a woman and dresses her like a Dutch milkmaid with the braids and the clogs, the whole getup. She raises geese, ducks, chickens, 2 cows, and a flock of sheep on the farm's roof. So everyone in 1903 is looking at Hammerstein like anyone who comes on my tour looks at me while I tell the story, which is mildly skeptical, but mildly entertained. And they would each hand their $1 because that's the weirdest thing you've ever heard. And so now let me show you photos of the entire farm. So as we zoom in on the photo you were just looking at, here at the back of the theater is the full farm at the very back. And so up the set of stairs on what is now the new Victory, Hammerstein also owned that theater next door. So the 2 theaters downstairs next to each other had one kind of thing that went all the way across. And on this photo, I don't know how big your screen is, but you should be able to see kind of the windmill, which we'll zoom in. You'll have all the guys in the middle just drinking. They loved Hamilton. They thought the Hamilton was great. And then if you look next to them, if you have incredible eyes, if you look at the very top of the stairs, there's a little tiny sheep, a little lamb at the very top, just another Wednesday after Hamilton in 1903. Let's zoom in. Let me pull up for you the river and the windmill that you see here. Wild. Just a river and a windmill on the roof, just another Wednesday. And then it took me what I think was almost 6 years to find a photo with the cow. You've only known me now for 29 minutes, but I love a challenge. And so I thought, okay, there's got to be a photo with the cow. It took me almost 6 years to find it, but I found it. Never met a challenge I couldn't overcome. And so here is the full farm with our milkmaid and one of the two cows that you see on the roof. Carnegie Hall is a tent on the roof that is used for performances. Sean. Okay, so maybe this is like a similar thing, like similar. I don't, Carnegie Hall. I love them, and it's a beautiful building, an inflatable tent and all. They don't have cows, so it's going to be hard to beat. It's hard to beat this. And so there in the middle is the cow. You see the milkmaid with her bucket of either liquor or milk. We'll never know. And then I find this photo after 6 years, and I said, well, how do I know? Before I take all of your money and say, here's a cow, here's the milkmaid, it was right here. How do I know? And so I played my favorite game in New York City, which is I Spy. I put the photo on my iPad. I stood on 42nd Street and I said, I'm going to see if there's anything left. It tells me I'm in the right spot. And in the background, I see 5 flower pots in back behind. And I always knew the farm was on the top of what is today the New Victory Theater. And the New Victory Theater, I want you to see, because you're not standing in Times Square with me. And well, I'm not standing in Times Square. I'm sitting on my couch in Hamilton Heights. But here I want you to see the New Victory. So take a mental snapshot of those 5 flower pots. I hope you have it in your brain. Good luck. Okay, it's all up to you to remember now. And so now let me show you what the New Victory looks like today. And you're going to notice no flower pots when Patrick pulls this photo up. And you'll see the letters on the top, no flower pots, but that's where the flower pots used to be. And I know this because if you take a mental snapshot of this building, here is, here is that same view just 121 years ago. And what do you notice? There's the entire New Victory, then called the Theater Republic. And at the very top, there's our 5 flower pots. And if you zoom in, there's even the little tip of a farmhouse in that photo, which proves to us there really was a farm on the roof of the theater. Sean says hello from the control room at the Drew Barrymore show. Sean, you're fancy. I like that. You're very fancy. Tell Drew Barrymore I said hi. We talk about her great aunt on our tours when we get to the Ethel Barrymore Theater, and we talk about the whole Barrymore family. So you'll have to join for what is called our Hippies, Discos, and Dogs tour. But thanks for joining, and congratulations on a great show. I rarely am home at the right time to watch it as I run around New York City, but the episodes I have seen, she kills it. She makes it look very easy, and as us in the business know, it is not very easy. So the New Victory, the cow on the roof, it is all correct. It's in the right spot. The whole thing to me is wild. And while you're looking at this photo on your screen, the photo is of what is our oldest Broadway theater that's still standing. I have to use huge air quotes around the word Broadway because it's identical to the day it was built. Only one thing has changed, and it's the thing that matters most. It's the number of seats in the building. So as you know, 1,000 seats originally means Broadway. 26 years ago during renovations, they took out 501 seats, making it $4.99. And so it is officially off-Broadway, even though originally Broadway. The irony of the building, my favorite thing about the New Victory now is our oldest Broadway theater was the biggest house of burlesque in the entire city. The Minsky brothers bring in burlesque in the 30s, showing a little bit of shoulders, very shocking for the 1930s. And one woman is discovered here, her unveiling, for lack of a better pun. Her name was Gypsy Rose Lee. Her unveiling in 1931 in the biggest house of burlesque in New York City. The irony now is that New Victory only presents children's theater currently. And so our big, more adult shows have lended themselves now to more children's theater fare. Sarah says, how did the cow fit on the elevator? So no elevator in the original building. So up the stairs, presumably, or a dumbwaiter, like when they bring a piano in the old cartoony black and white films, maybe up the side. The question I will say that I get very often on our tours when we're standing on 42nd Street is, well, how did the cow get off the roof and what happened to him? And I think, oh God, they don't document that, but presumably steak. I mean, presumably he came off not in one piece, but I don't know. We'll never really know. We just have 2 photos of him, and that's it, really. And so that's all we get for the cow. Trust me, I've done way too deep of a dive into the cow in this life. He ended up at Keen's. Patty, you're like, he tasted great. Patty is not a vegetarian, is what we've just learned. I have just a few more minutes with you. And so I want to tell you a story that I don't often tell. And I'll do something a little different than I normally do. And I don't even know that I have pictures for you, but we'll do some rewinding of photos And you're like, what is he talking about? In the middle of the pandemic, we went through this crazy, 20 months, and we still, in many ways, are still going through crazy months of our lives. I have a gift shop in Times Square that is all handmade merchandise. I do tours in Times Square. I'm an actor. My entire life is really in about 10 square blocks. I've walked down 42nd Street more times than I can ever count. But for the first time during the pandemic, walking down 42nd Street where there wasn't other people was eerie. It was surreal. It was strange. But all those adjectives aside, I felt lucky because for the first time ever, I could look at things that I have never seen before because I have the time to just casually stroll down and I'm not in someone's way. And I'm walking, headed. Sharon's coming through with a strong emoji game. Thank you, Sharon. I I was walking east towards 7th Avenue, towards the original Times Tower, and I look up at the side of the New Victory, and I see something I've never noticed, and I've looked at this theater way too many times to count. Almost at the roof, or what I think is almost at the roof, I see an arch on the side of the building, the western side, and it's been filled in with concrete, but you can see the arch. And I thought, I've never seen that. I had my iPad with me and I'm looking at the original photos of the theater that we just looked at. And there's the arches with the flower pots at the top. And I said, the arch there that's filled in concrete matches the one in front. But from my vantage point, I can't tell if it's one level below, which would mean it was like a dressing room, or if it's the same partition that wrapped around. And in fact, pieces of the roof are still there. I was under the assumption in all my research and all of my Google Earth and talking with people at the building that no remnants of the farm existed. And I'm in the pandemic looking at this thing and I thought, well, anyone else would just go, and keep walking, but I'm me. And so I pull out my phone and I text my friend, Colleen and Lauren, who work at the New Victory. After you work here and live here, as Control Room Sean at the Drew Barrymore Show can attest, my Rolodex is random and robust. And so I text these beautiful women who work at this theater and I said, beautiful souls of humans, will you tell me this little thing I'm seeing on the side, is that an original remnant of the farm? Or am I going crazy? Also, happy global pandemic. And I got a text back instantly that said, I don't know. We don't ever go up to the roof. Is that a thing you want to do? Do you want to go to the roof? And I said, what? They said, yeah, I don't know. Come tomorrow. So Friday, middle of a global pandemic, I show up at the theater. They pull out the keys, jingling on their little ring of keys, and they said, "Let's go to the roof and let's investigate." And so we get to the roof, and I said, "Okay, the way I'll know if it's original farm is if it's on the same level as the New Victory letters that replace the front arches. That'll be my okay, and then I'll know." And we walk up the stairs, and there's the arch, and then there's a row of arches above the one that's been filled in. And you walk through one of the original farm arches, still to this day, still intact. And when you come around and you're standing on the roof, all of the arches that were on the side have all been filled in with bricks and concrete on some sides. And the remnants of the farm that I had thought there's nothing left 121 years later, there is. And the arches were still there. And so I'm standing there and I said to Colleen, this is the first time I've ever gotten to stand on the roof of this place that I've talked about on my tours for forever. It's one of my favorite stories, cow and all. And I said, I've never really while I'm here, can I kind of recreate with the photos we have of what went where? And she said, okay, sure. And as we're standing there, I thought in front of me, I look up and she said, okay, so there's a ladder, you climb up and then you're on the top carriage house. You're above the stage at that point. She said, when you first come up, you're above the audience, the house. And then that you climb up and there's the fly space and you're above. And I look and staring in front of me is the water tower, the original water tower for the building. And I looked at Colleen and I said, you know what? You're going to think I'm crazy that I think about things like this. The water tower, where was it when it was a farm? She said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, in the original photo, let me see if I can take you back. Because now I'm going out of order to tell you this story. There it is. So here, Patrick, I'm pulling up for you this photo. And so if you look at the side of the photo, there's the New Victory with our flower pots there on the left side of the photo. I hope you see that. I don't know. I can't see your faces. And so I'll assume you can see that. And then there's the water tower that's there above the H in Hammerstein when you go. I'm sure you see it. And so the water tower is in the original photos, but then when you get to the farm, it's not there. But then there I was in the middle of a global pandemic looking, and there it is, the exact with the rings and the whole thing. It's all the same. And I looked at Colleen and I said, it's never occurred to me. The windmill is the water tower. And she said, what? And I said, the reason they built this ginormous windmill is to hide the water tower. So it didn't feel like New York. It felt like this Dutch farm. And we're standing there and I said, I'm making educated guesses based on my research, but I don't know that we'll ever know. And I said, but wait. Let me pull up the photo of the water tower. And so I pull up this photo on my iPad and we're standing there in front of it. And let me pull it up for you again. And I'm standing there and there I am. And I look, and on either side of the water tower, or of the windmill, I'm asking you to have incredible eyesight. You'll see two little pipes. One that comes out behind the see-through kind of slat lattice part of the windmill, and then on the other side, free and clear there in the air, there's two little pipes. And then you look at the water tower today, and the two little water pipes; those are the water pipes of the tower, and it proves to us. That's what they did. That's what they hid. The water, the part that comes up above, that's the little ladder space. And Colleen looked at me and she said, you're probably the only one in the globe that has such a weird niche knowledge of this because you've been digging up these stories for so long. And what I learned in the global pandemic is that New York City, a city that I've always known as glorious, Broadway, my favorite industry in the world, a lot of it is still there. You just have to know where to look and you have to kind of know all the context clues to get you to what is left, what is not left. And I started this company. I started this company 11 years ago off the idea of let's tap into the weird, crazy stories, the nooks and crannies of this industry that we've spent so much time in these buildings, but have we really done the full history of the structures, the buildings, and the people who built the buildings themselves and all of their quirks, both as a human and architecturally. And so this was just today, the smallest, tiniest little taste of my original tour, which was 7 hours long. And I always, when I do these virtual tours, I blink and they're over, and I blinked and it's over. And so if you loved today, if you want to know more, we'll do a little Q&A now. If you have questions, you can put those in the chat. Me and Patrick will chat and talk about your questions. But you can also always find us online, BroadwayUpClose.com. If you are Instagram or Facebook people, Broadway Up Close, of course, is our handle there. You can find us on the interwebs. But you guys have been great. Thank you for being interactive. Thank you for your questions. I'm so sorry I don't know more about the demise of the cow on the roof, but I will never stop digging till I find out the full story of Steak or Not.
All right, help me give it up from your living rooms for Tim Dolan. Tim, this is always just such a fascinating tour to me, and I'm coming from the history buff side. I'm marrying a woman in December that comes very much from the theater side, so I've learned more about that in the past several years, and I love that you bring it together.
Thank you.
It's so fascinating. I wanted to ask you about while we're seeing if any other. What was Sharon asking?
Oh, Sharon says, when are you going to write a musical set in the New Vic farm? So Sharon, I am working on a show. It's a one-man show about, how does one dig up a story? So the New Victory features in the show, but it's not a musical and it's not set on the New Vic farm yet. So, but it's good to know that if that does end up being what happens, that I've at least sold one ticket to the show.
I do look forward to Broadway Up Close, the musical. You could put all this in musical form. Tim, I was going to ask you about that. You're such a researcher. I think it's really cool that you're presenting information and you're presenting conclusions that I think you're the first one to present this information or make these conclusions, like things like the windmill as the water tower. And it makes me wonder where you get all your material from. Are you just scouring the internet? Are you going to the New York Public Library, the New York Historical Society?
All of it. Yeah, everything and all of it. Yeah. So in person, of course, archives are my favorite because you can see the documents. You're finding things that other people, are just blow off the dust. And you're like, I don't know what this old book is. Here, you look. The thing about archives is now, 11 years later, I have enough, what I call connecting of the dots. I have enough background history and enough things to do when you read something and a name comes up, that's a name of a story from something else we talk about. And so you can really you have context when you're looking at a document. But every archive, internet archives, photo archives, digital archives, in-person archives, my library is a treasure trove of books on architecture and finance, lots of oral histories. Every time I do a show, my favorite actors are the ones who, play the older characters who have been in the business for forever. And so I'm always picking their brain. When people are working on contemporary shows now, I call myself like kind of a sticky fly trap of all, I become the catch-all of something weird happens and they're like, we should tell Tim about this. And so then, the ball starts to, they find you instead of you searching them out. And so it's anything and everything. I'll read a 500-page book and I'll pull 2 lines out of the book. The problem is that I've read the entire 500-page book. And so I have 499 other pages up here that no one cares about. But every once in a while I'll download and they, they add up, but it's a lot of useless knowledge.
It's incredible. And I definitely see what you mean about becoming the catch-all, because I already am thinking of books I've read that I feel like I'm going to email you after this.
Yeah, I would love
Tim, you have to read this. And you're
Yeah,
going to tell me you already
that's
have.
my favorite. Yeah.
Incredible. I was going to ask you, you mentioned the delineator for off-Broadway and Broadway being the seat count. Is there any history to that? Do you know why that number was chosen?
So as far as like the definitive why that number, I can tell you that it started in the late 60s, early 70s is when it became a thing. And that's because we start to do rock musicals, we start to do smaller musicals. And so these smaller theaters that have always been there are maybe in more untraditional spaces. It was kind of the counter or the antithesis of big Broadway, big Hello Dollies. And so because you had so many shows happening off Broadway, they gave it an official classification, official name in the 1970s. And it came out of the little theater movement, which then also leads to the regional theater movement. It's why we have a lot of regional theaters, what we call Lorch contracts, League of Regional Theaters. And so all of that comes out of this moment of, we've only done huge, big musicals up until that point. Is there other things? Shows like the Fantastics are the perfect kind of things that come out of that world of shows that are like 6 people, no set, in a basement, and then it runs for 90 years and makes the person who wrote it, a gajillionaire because there's no budget and it costs nothing. It's the antithesis of, Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark or Moulin Rouge.
Sure. It's a fascinating history.
And I'll tell you, the guy who's bothering me right now next to me, this is my French bulldog, Belasco. He's named after my favorite Broadway theater. It's the Belasco Theater. It's the most haunted. It's my absolute favorite. At 5 p.m., he eats every day. And at 4:48, 4:49, this happens every time. No matter what I'm doing, he will come over and he just sits and stares at me. And he has an internal clock that knows exactly when 5 p.m. is. And so that's what you're seeing is happening live in front of you.
Getting ready for his own showtime. Yes.
Correct.
And yeah, that's right. Belasco, David Belasco, right?
David Belasco nailed it. Yeah.
I think he still sort of walks the halls of the Belasco Theater, I hear.
Yes, sightings of David Belasco, sightings of his girlfriend, the lady in blue, we call her. Yeah, all kinds of weird, strange things. It's my favorite. So I had to name our company mascot Belasco.
So much more to learn from you in the future, Tim.
Sure. I'm a wealth of useless knowledge.
Not at all. Fascinating knowledge. I want to answer Sally before I forget. Sally was asking us about the Sing for Hope pianos.
Oh yeah,
Sally, we are working hard. We hope to return the Sing for Hope pianos in the same scale to New York City as soon as we can. But in the meantime, I want to tell you that there are still some Sing for Hope pianos available around New York City. So I encourage you to go to singforhope.org/pianos, and you can see on the map where those pianos are placed right now. We are still very much invested in the Sing for Hope pianos project. Okay, Tim, last question, because we were all, you saw in the chat, we were all very excited about the Rooftop Theater. Do you know, why don't we have rooftop theaters in New York City anymore?
So the demise of all of them, which I don't think I told you, was where they made all their money upstairs was liquor sales. So the shows, again, I know, we're going to eat. It's going to be so good when you eat. It's going to taste so good, but in 10 minutes. Welcome to working from home. It's going great. Does everyone else that come on your tour or come on your show have dogs and cats that are named for Broadway theaters? Is my challenge for you. I'm very on brand. 1919, this little thing came along called Prohibition. You can't legally sell liquor. All the rooftop gardens, only where they made their money was liquor sales. So by 1923, every rooftop garden had been removed and destroyed. The last one that hung on by a thread till 1923 was the Victoria Rooftop Garden, the Paradise Roof with the farm. But even that wasn't enough. And now, all these years later, in a pandemic, I mean, what a glorious thing to have. There's one on 42nd Street. They're building this kind of crazy thing that will take too long to tell you about. But there was an interior of a theater that's they're restoring and moving, and it's a whole thing. But they're recreating the entire interior of the theater in glass on the roof of the theater. And as part of it, there's a little garden cafe roof kind of thing with this space. And so it's a little tiny wink to our past. It's the closest I think we'll get to a farm or a garden on 42nd Street again. But I think sadly it's a part of our industry that's a relic of the past.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think we all can say we were feeling very nostalgic with you today.
Sure.
It's so fun to look back at those pictures and just see how this all developed and continues to develop. So, Tim, thank you so much for joining us again. It really is a pleasure having you on here.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I want to tell you that we had nearly 300 viewers. So you were entertaining the masses today.
Yes, I'll take it.
Absolutely. And I want to encourage everyone watching to please visit singforhope.org/calendar. You can see all the great things we have coming up. Programs from exploring careers in the arts to exploring some dance works in dance tomorrow. So please come back and join us for more. You can visit singforhope.org/donate to learn all the ways that you can contribute to open arts. We appreciate anything that comes our way. Thank you so much, everybody. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you at an open arts program soon.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.